bouncer said my military ID was fake until the bar owner saw the name and started crying. The bar was called Fallback, a dive on the edge of Charleston with peeling paint and a neon sign that flickered like a dying heartbeat. I'd driven 3 hours to get here, following an address I'd found in my brother's belongings after the funeral. Austin had been dead for 6 months, and I was still finding pieces of his life I didn't understand. This place was one of them. A matchbook with the name scrawled on the back in his handwriting, tucked inside a book about combat trauma he'd never mentioned reading. I needed to know why this place mattered to him. I needed to understand the brother I'd apparently never really known. The parking lot was mostly empty on this Wednesday evening. Just a few motorcycles and beat-up trucks scattered across the cracked asphalt. I locked my car and walked toward the entrance, my brother's dog tags hanging around my neck under my shirt, where I'd worn them every day since the funeral. The bouncer was massive, 6'5" easily, with arms like tree trunks and a beard that covered half his face. He sat on a stool by the door, scrolling through his phone with one hand while the other rested on his knee. When I approached, he looked up and sized me up in that way security does, making instant calculations about threat level and likelihood of causing problems. I'm 6 feet and weigh about 170 pounds, lean from my Marine Corps training, but not particularly intimidating compared to this guy. He nodded at me to come forward and asked for my ID in a voice that sounded like gravel grinding. I pulled out my military ID card, the one that identified me as Sergeant Kyle Osman, United States Marine Corps, currently on authorized leave. He took it and held it up to the light, squinting at the photo and then at my face. Then his expression changed, hardening into something suspicious and hostile. "This is fake," he said flatly, handing the card back to me. I stared at him, confused. It wasn't fake. It was a legitimate military ID issued by the Department of Defense with all the proper security features and holograms. I told him it was real, and he could verify it if he needed to. He shook his head and crossed his arms, his biceps straining against his shirt sleeves. He said he'd seen enough fake IDs to know one when he saw it, and mine was definitely fake. The photo looked photoshopped, and the card felt wrong in his hand. He told me to leave before he called the cops for fraud and impersonating a service member. My face got hot with anger and embarrassment. A few people had stopped outside to watch the confrontation, curious about the commotion. I insisted again that my ID was real, that I was actually in the Marines, that this was absurd. The bouncer stood up to his full height, towering over me by several inches, and said if I didn't leave immediately, he'd physically remove me from the property. I was about to argue more when the front door of the bar opened and a man stepped out, probably in his early 50s, with gray hair and weathered skin that spoke of too many years in the sun. He wore jeans and a faded military t-shirt and moved with the careful precision of someone whose body had taken damage and learned to compensate. He asked what the problem was, and the bouncer explained that I was trying to use a fake military ID to get in. The older man asked to see the ID, and the bouncer handed it over with a satisfied expression, like he was handing evidence to a judge. The man held the card under the exterior light and read